Namaskar. Vedo Akhilo Dharma Moolam. Veda is the foundation or the root of our dharma. Who said this? It's Manu. Friends, it's a quick comment on a video which is getting circulated from the past few days. The video is on Manusmriti. Seems to be an attempt to legitimize the authority of Manusmriti as a text, but in a very unscholarly and stereotyped manner. So what is this stereotyping? It's a situation where an author or a speaker or a scholar tries to attach sentiments of a target audience group, whether social, political, linguistic, or the religious groups, to some text of their faith. Why it is done? It is done in order to build a wall of defense in the interest of the scholar. When a scholar wants to create a fan group who can act as a wall of defense, they take the approach of stereotyping. And it's a global phenomenon. You cannot blame India or the Indians alone. Look at the books which are published in the matters related to Manusmriti in the past 2 to 3 decades. Even the books produced by internationally renowned Western scholars like Patrick Olivelle, many places you will see the approach of stereotyping. And here in India, we are in a phase of transition where a collective consciousness is growing for India to become the world guru, Vishwa Guru again. And in such a situation, in this phase, we cannot afford to have stereotype. We need to develop critical thinking, to adopt critical approach towards our text so that we can understand the message hidden there and can internalize the message. This is what our rishis wanted. Okay, so let us move further to our topic of the day. Manusmriti is named after Manu, but this is where another question arises. Our tradition lets us know that we had 14 Manus. So, who is this particular Manu? I tell you that he is the earliest of all, first Manu, Swayambhuva Manu. Now, when this Manu was moving on the earth in part of India, probably Manu happened in the beginning of Treta. Why Treta? Because it is the Treta when agriculture started, when the production started, when the wealth creation started in India, and that required a system in the society. And our Manu, Swayambhu Manu, he took initiative to organize life into a system relevant to his age. He tries to, if you read Manusmriti, you will find that Manu tries to organize a plant kingdom, animal kingdom, human life into a system. Not only into a system, but he also explains the standards and norms of ethics, morality, family value, duties towards family and the society, and also certain rules for doing the judgment in the interest of justice. So that was the first attempt probably in the entire world if we compare our history with the history of other parts of the world. And this is where the importance comes out, why we need to understand Manusmriti. As a takeaway of this quick comment, a brief explanation about Manu and Manusmriti, an idea expressed by Manu, which is very scientific in nature. Manu, while he tries to explain the plant kingdom, he also says that the plants have got antah sangya. That means the sensitivity which is built into the plants inside them. They are the living being. They can experience pain and pleasure. We know that in the 19th century, Indian scientist Jagdish Chandra Basu and others have demonstrated it. But just imagine how many thousand years ago it was the Manu, first in the world, giving the idea that plants have got life and sensitivity. Antah Sangya. Now we are going to address the chronology and antiquity of Manusmriti and Manu himself. There is a systematic approach that we can take up. First, we need to understand the baseline, the conventional date of Manusmriti, which is 2nd century BCE, widely accepted now, but it was not forever. So there are texts like Mahabharata and Valmiki, which are supposed to be anterior to this date of 2nd century BCE. Manu's rules are mentioned in Mahabharata in its Adi Parv, Shanti Parv at various places. Similarly, in Valmiki's Ramayana in Kiskindha Kand and Lanka Kand, Ravana refers to Manu as an authority. So therefore, Manusmriti and Manu, they both existed before the compilation of Mahabharata and Valmiki Ramayana. That is one side. The other side of approach is to look some secular texts, as our secular friends like to refer to them, which are Kautilya's Arthashastra. There is a mention of Manu and then Yaska's Nirukta. So Kautilya's Arthashastra takes Manusmriti to 4th century BCE, whereas the Yaska's Nirukta, which is conventionally, I don't agree with that, which is conventionally dated in 8th century BCE. And there is a mention of Manu. So that means Manu and his work, Manusmriti, Swayambhu Manu I am talking about, that existed before 8th century BCE somewhere. And then there are other texts. Most important among those, Baudhayan Srauta Sutra. There is a mention of Manu. Baudhayan Srauta Sutra is dated somewhere nearly 1000 BCE, and Manu's mention takes Manu's existence before 1000 BCE somewhere. So we can safely draw a baseline that is the 1000 BCE or 3000 years from now. And you will be happy to know that William Jones, in his translation, took up the same date, 12th century BCE, precisely 1250 BCE. And some other German scholars also took or also dated Manusmriti in 1000 BC. Now we are going to address the point of controversy. We all know that the controversy emerges around the mention of Varna, Chatur Varna, or the four Varnas in the Manusmriti. But our friends who do not like Manusmriti will get surprised to know that actually Swayambhu Manu proposed a dynamic system of Varna. Manu says, Sudro Brahmanatam eti, Brahmanas chaiti Sudratam. That means Brahmanas may become Shudra and Shudra may become Brahmana. That was a dynamic model that he presented before the society. It was not a static, fixated, flat model. And this dynamism in approach to design a dynamic society is a point of great admiration, point of respect. The text deserves respect and honor, and that has to come from our side. Nobody else would do if we don't do it. Friends, Manusmriti always refers to Vedas as authority. So we should look into Vedas also. What is there? So I tell you, in Rigveda itself, there is a Purushukta, And normally Purush Sukta is also presented in a stereotyped manner, a common practice. Purush Sukta has got 16 mantras, but it is the 12th mantra of the Purush Sukta, which is very popular, and stereotyping is done by not by the overseas scholars, the Western scholars, but it is done by our acharyas and pandits and Indian authors also. Global phenomena. While we are studying a sukta of Rigveda or any chapter of a book, it is expected from scholars to undergo the complete chapter to arrive at a logical conclusion. But that is not being done in the matters of Indian texts. Everybody likes to jump directly on the 12th mantra, which reads Brahmano asya mukham asit bahurajanya krita Uru tadasyad vaishya padbhyam shudro ajayat. Everybody would refer to it. Nobody bothers to look at the 11th mantra, just a mantra before 12th mantra. Why? Because this 11th mantra creates a window for understanding the sukta better. What was the concept? Why it is said that is said in the 12th mantra? 11th mantra says it's a question. Question is raised by the mantra drashta to God, and the answer is given by the God. There is a clue. So 11th mantra goes like this. Yat purusham vyadadhu katidha vyakalpayan. How it is envisaged or imagined. What is imagined? The entire society has been imagined in the form of theoretical Purusha or a man. The god of this sukta, the Purush sukta, is not a god like Indra, Brihaspati, Surya, Agni, or Varuna. The god of this sukta is a hypothetical man. So that is the first attempt which happened in India, that followers of Karl Marx must understand what is happened here, is visualizing entire society as a body of a man, hypothetical man. That was an attempt to bind entire society into one thread, one common thread. That's why the term comes katidha vikalpayan. What are the types of the organs or the limbs of some authors intentionally has been misleading to society by the mention of padbhyam sudro ajayat. So why the padbhyam? It is the only occurrence of the word. Actually, it's not. If you go to 14th mantra of the same sukta, you will find entire land mass of the earth, the India in this context, has come from the feet of this Purusha. That means since that time, our social scientists, our rishis, were aware of the entire Indian subcontinent and the people living on this subcontinent, and what they did is the embodiment of entire society along with the space, along with the landmass where they were existing. That's why in the 14th mantra they say Padbhyam Bhumir Disha. From the feet of the god, this hypothetical Purus or the human being, the land, and the Disha, the directions, because it's widely spread. That's why Bhumir Disha. Directions and the land both has come from the feet of the god. So there is as such no sense of discrimination, but rather one last thing about the Manu. So in the Rig Veda, we find mention of two Manus, Vaivashvat Manu and Savarni Manu, and this has a connection with the chronology and the antiquity dating of the Manu and Manusmriti. So Savarni Manu is said to be a Gramini in 62nd Sukta of the 10th Mandala, 10.62. Gramini means a head of villages. So when Savarni Manu occurred, the villages or the rural culture was coming up, not the urban culture. And before the Savarni Manu, there was Vaivashvat Manu. Vaivashvat Manu is mentioned in the next sukta, that is the 10.63, and many other places. Basically, it is the Vaivashvat Manu our civilization sprang. Thank you. I think you have enjoyed and the right message in order to, in the interest of society's integrity, has gone out to our people. Thank you and namaskar again.